Shalom. Welcome back to Y-Ministries.net. Please click on the subscribe button and on the notification button so that you can be fully informed of new videos that we put online. Now, all these videos and the notes that accompany are completely free of charge to all who want to watch them or to download them. Because we have freely received from Yahweh, we freely share with you. Now, listen, it's your responsibility to check out the Bible verses that are referred to make sure that things are interpreted properly. Okay? And be guided by the Holy Spirit and do take the whole counsel of God. In other words, don't base your doctrines on one or two verses, but search out relevant verses throughout the Bible. That's our approach in this ministry, because our goal is to arrive at the truth and to teach people to abide in the truth so that we can get to the place where Yahweh wants us to get to. So very important, the seed that you receive, the spiritual seed that you receive, the teaching that you receive, the doctrines that you receive, if they are good seed, godly seed, the result will be good fruits. Otherwise, there'll be bad fruits in our lives. And that applies to myself personally and to everyone who is watching these videos. As I was concluding the part one of this video subject on the mingled seed, Nephilim, and Gibbors, I began to talk about the book of Enoch and how depravity came through the fallen angels when they intermarried with human women and procreated their offspring, called the Nephilim. Now, I'm going to quote from a source called New Dawn magazine, where an article on this subject is written. So I quote, in the book of Enoch, it says that the leader of the fallen angels called Azazel, and he's often identified as Lucifer, the light bringer, or Lumiel, the light of God. He taught men to forge swords, to make shields and breastplate, body armor. Azazel also taught them metallurgy, how to mine from the earth and use different metals. To the woman, he taught the art of making bracelets, ornaments, rings, and necklaces from precious metals and stones. He also showed them how to beautify the eyelids with kohl and the use of cosmetic tricks to attract and seduce the opposite sex. From these practices, Enoch says there came much godlessness, and men and women committed fornication, were led astray, became corrupt in their ways. The fallen angel Shem, another form of Azazel, is said by Enoch to have taught humans the use of root cuttings and the magical art of enchantment. The fallen angel Amaros taught the resolving or banishing of enchantments. Barachijal taught astrology. Kokabiel, the knowledge of the constellations or astronomy. Chazakil, the knowledge of the clouds in the sky, weather law and divination. Shamsiel, the science of the sun, the solar mysteries and mysteries. Sariel, the causes of the moon, the lunar cycles used in horticulture and agriculture, and the esoteric lunar mysteries. Penumor instructed humans in the art of writing and reading, and Kash Dejan taught the diagnosis and healing of diseases and the science of medicine. Unquote. All these are in the book of Enoch. Right. Moreover, So you can see how much of the corruption came into this world. Think of sorcery, think of witchcraft, think of the terrible sins of different types of fornication, multiple partners, think of sodomy and such like. Okay? Think of pedophilia and exploitation of children and so on. These are forms of depravity that even human beings themselves very often recognize as extreme depravity. But all this apparently came into the world through the 200 fallen angels cohabiting with human women. And moreover, the book of Enoch also records something else, that the fallen angels cohabited with animals, and I believe what lies in the seas as well, to produce half human, half animals that you can see until today in the statues, the pictures, and the records of ancient societies, antiquities. Think of the mermaid, which is the first half of the body is a woman, the lower half is a fish body and tail. Think of humans with leopard heads and human bodies and so on. There are many such in the folklore and the legends of antiquities. They are still around in the world today. If you just click on Google and you want to click for half man, half birds, or whatever, half men, half animals, you see pictures galore of these things. Now, where did they come from? Okay, at least when you read the book of Enoch, you know the source of these things. All right, and you can see it's no wonder, as I said in the first part of the video, part one of the video, it's no wonder that Yahweh unleashed the great flood that killed all humans, men, women, children, animals, creeping things, birds, except Noah and his family and the animals allowed into the ark. And this is attested by the next three verses of Genesis chapter 6, namely verses 5 to 7. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, and he repented Yahweh that he had made men on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And Yahweh said, I will destroy man whom I created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them. So there you are. You can see that the book of Enoch actually supplies us with the missing elements, and we put them together, we have a fuller and better understanding of why the great flood occurred, why it was necessary for Yahweh to destroy every human being in the entire earth at that time. Men, women, children, infants, they were not spared. Why? The reason is simple: contaminated DNA. Yahweh wanted to get rid of. Now, in the Genesis 6 verses that we quoted, 1 to 4 and now 5 to 7, you will see that it says there were Nephilim in the earth before the flood and afterward, after the flood, afterward. All right, there are quite a few examples that we're going to talk about. So, but first, the question: how is it possible if all the contaminated human beings and animals and birds and reptiles were destroyed in the great flood? Well, think of the survivors in the ark. Very interestingly, of all the 8 people in the ark, only Noah is marked out in Genesis by Yahweh to say that he was perfect in his generation. That's perhaps his way of telling us that his DNA was uncontaminated. You remember he was from the line of Seth, but the other descendants of Seth all were killed in the flood. And interestingly, also, the Bible is silent on the name of his wife. Of course, I know in the book of Jasher, the name is given, but the Bible excludes the name. And to me, that's very significant because when names are excluded, there's something strange. Like Lot's wife doesn't have a name either. And we know that she perished. She became a pillar of salt because she didn't want to get out of Sodom and Gomorrah. And think of the animals, clean, unclean, that were brought into the ark. Some of them were contaminated DNA as well. So I postulate that for human beings, the sons of Noah and their wives and his own wife had some contamination in their DNA. And that's how the Nephilim could reappear after the flood. Now, again, I'm going to go through the appearance of some giants in the Bible, but that's not as important as the gibbors that appear in the Bible and in the world. Okay, so my emphasis is on gibbors. Look for gibbors. Don't look for giants in the world today. Look for people with fame, right? Remember the three characteristics: uh, Nephilim, gibbors, and shem. Shem means reputation, name. Okay, so look for the latter two rather than the first. But let me take you through giants post the flood. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, verses 10 and 11. The Enims dwelt therein in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims, which also were counted giants as the Anakims, but the Moabites called them Emins. So all the names of these tribes, okay, they were accounted as giants. Now the Hebrew word is Rapha, of which you get Raphaim, a tribe of giants. Okay, now how gigantic were these giants? Well, the one that is features as the premier giant post flood was a guy called King Og of Bashan. Og, king of Bashan, Og. Where do we read it? Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnants of giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Is it not in Rabbah of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, after the cubit of a man. Now, note that a cubit is about 18 inches. So the bed was about 13 and a half feet long and 6 feet wide. So he must have been a person, a man, 11 to 12 feet tall. That this big bed could accommodate him. Now that's pretty tall and pretty big because most people are less than 6 feet. Okay, most people, or even 6.5 feet. So this is more than twice the so-called tall people we see around ourselves. What about Goliath, the famous giant that David killed with his slingshot in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 4? There went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. So according to the 18-inch per cubit, and the span meaning the length of a man's arm, he would be about 9 feet 9 inches tall. Now that's pretty tall. It's almost 50% taller than the average tall man in the world today. However, this is interesting. Of all the translations of the Bible, the Septuagint gives us a different figure. The Septuagint says he was only 4 cubits and a span, which means that he would only be about 6 foot 9 inches tall. 6 foot 9 inches. Well, you can take your choice either way, but certainly he will be less tall than the king of Bashan. Now, what about the infamous report of the 10 spies? Remember, Moses sent out 12 spies into the promised land to come back and report on the condition of the land and the people in the land. And 10 of them gave a bad report, 2 of them gave a good report. In Numbers chapter 13, 32 and 33 gives us the bad report, part of the bad report of 10 spies. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they have searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search, it is a land that eats up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it were men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, as we were in their sight. So imagine a grasshopper versus these giants. Okay? And we are so small, so tiny. They are so huge, so tall. Now, you got to be careful here. You don't take Numbers 13:33 seriously, okay? Because they were exaggerating. They would have been exaggerating about the size of Anakims to discourage their brethren from entering the promised land. I have no doubt that Anakim probably looked fierce to them, probably looked a little bigger than they were. Of course, these are men trained in warfare, very muscular warriors and so on. They must have been very scared of them. But just be careful of exaggeration. Okay? By way of contrast, the faithful spies, Joshua and Caleb, they were more confident of dealing with the Anakims. And here I refer you to the book of Numbers, chapter 14, verses 6 to 9. Verse 6. Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes, they tore their clothes. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to search it is an exceeding good land. If Yahweh delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only rebel not against Yahweh, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and Yahweh is with us. Fear them not. Now, here we have the opposite. These are two men, Joshua and Caleb, full of the Holy Spirit, obedient to Yahweh, who firmly believed that Yahweh was on the side of the Israelites. They had seen the exploits of Yahweh in the deliverance from Egypt, in the battles that they encountered in the wilderness, how they prevailed against larger forces. So they had no fear. They had no fear. And the emphasis was on the good things in the land. The emphasis was that Yahweh was with them. And this is something that a lesson that we all have to learn. Very often we face adversities, trials and tribulations and tragedies, and we can look at the dark side of things, the pessimistic side of things, and feel doomed, feel despair, or we can be encouraged that despite the darkness, despite the adverse circumstances, there's still hope in Christ. As long as we are in Him, as long as we have promises for us, we can have a better future, if not now, then later in His kingdom. Certainly, we have deliverance from evil that comes from Him. He empowers us, He guides us. So there you are. if you can choose to believe the 10 spies who were against entering the land, or the two good spies, then what happened? The plague killed the 10 spies. What happened? Everybody, every every person above the age of 20 were condemned to die in the wilderness. Only Joshua and Caleb were allowed to survive, and later Joshua and later Caleb led the children of Israel into Israel and in Israel itself. Now, let me next refer to the Greek mythology of Titans, Titans, and I'll tell you why I refer to Titans. A Titan, if you don't know, is about 25 feet tall. That's pretty tall. So if you divide by 6, that's 4 plus times the tallest man, almost 3 to 4 times the tallest man in the world. And his weight was something like 14,000 pounds. Now, you can check it up from the internet. I give the source in my notes. What's important is that the Septuagint, remember I told you, Septuagint is a Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament done 200 years before Christ. And I explained to you in my earlier videos that it is such an important document because it enables us to correlate Hebrew words with Greek words, which are used by the translators. So that helps us to understand the New Testament, because the New Testament texts are in Greek, and we want to see the correlation with the Hebrew counterpart words. Now, very interestingly, giants in the Greek Septuagint is translated as Titanon, Titanon, or Titans in our language. Here I refer to 2 Samuel chapter 5 and verse 18, and reading from the Septuagint. And the Philistines came and assembled in the valley of the giants. And the word giants has the Greek word Titanon. So we now say valley of the Titans. Now, in Greek mythology, a Titan is any of the children of their gods, like Uranus, depicting the god of heaven, Gaia, earth, and their descendants. And according to Greek mythology, the Titans were involved in some kind of a warfare. They were then hurled down by Zeus and imprisoned in a cavity beneath Tartarus. Very interesting that the Greek word for hell is Tartarus, the same word that Peter used in the second letter, chapter 2, verse 4, that we quoted earlier. All right, so that's Titans. Now let's look at the giants described in the book of Enoch. Enoch described the giants as the height of 3,000 ells, E-L-L-S. And again, the L is about 18 inches, similar to a cubit. And that translates to 4,500 feet tall. Now, that's awfully tall, right? Think of Mount Everest. Mount Everest is about 29,000 feet tall. In current day, I reckon 29, that's huge. So if this Nephilim were 4,500 feet, okay, and they could run to the top of a mountain like Everest, could they have survived the flood? The answer is still no. Still no. Why? Because the flood began with torrential rain for the first 40 days and 40 nights, followed by 110 days of light rain. So remember, heavy rain, 40 days, 40 nights, light rain, 110 days and nights. And it took another 74 days for when the rain stopped after what 150 days. Took another 74 days before Noah could see the top of the mountains. So in other words, Everest, if it was there, would not have been visible during the Great Flood. The flood was much higher than 29,000 feet. So, and it took 74 days before the top of the mountains could be seen, the highest mountains, so the floods will subside. So imagine any of these giants that made it to the top of, say, Mount Everest and stood on the top, the waters will rise and rise and rise and rise and completely drown them within the space of 150 days plus 74. Okay, and think of having no food to eat. How are you going to survive for so many days, over 200 days? Okay, right. So, is it possible that the Nephilim, the giants, were 4,500 feet? I do not know. Okay, but what does it matter? The whole point was Yahweh wanted to destroy them all. Okay. And interestingly, talking about current day, the tallest man recorded in recent history, human history, is an American called Robert Pershing Wadlow. Robert Pershing Wadlow, American who died 15 July 1940 at a very young age. I think about 20 or 20 plus. And his height at death was 8 feet 11 inches, 8 feet 11.1 inches. It was almost 9 feet tall. He was like Goliath in the one of the measurements that I gave you earlier. But what caused his giant stature? He was suffering from hypertrophy of his pituitary gland, which caused abnormal growth in height. Even as he lay dying, his body was still growing. So, other than this guy, I don't think there's any other person with unusual stature in the world. But apart from basketball players, they are tall, but they're not that alarmingly tall. Okay, right. So what people are looking for post the flood and around the world today, that you can search on the videos and on YouTube. There are commentators, preachers who are looking for modern day Nephilim, and by that they mean giants, people of great stature. Now, other than instances of sighting of Bigfoot, some kind of half-human creature somewhere in the jungle in some countries, and their footprints were extraordinarily large. You don't see giants on the earth today. And I believe that it's the wrong thing to be looking for. We ought to be looking for mighty men and men of renown, famous men, especially mighty men, which the Bible calls in the Hebrew gibbors, Gibbors. Let me give you the examples. I've already mentioned Nimrod earlier on. Nimrod. He, post-flood, he was the first described as a gibbor. Gibbor, a mighty man, a mighty hunter before the Lord, a mighty builder of the first empire, a mighty builder of the Tower of Babel that was reaching out to the heavens, a very tall tower meant for worshipping the false gods. Think of kings like Nebuchadnezzar. Think of the pharaohs of Egypt. Think of the emperors of Rome. Okay? I believe many of them were gibbors. Famous names, Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan, famous Mongol warrior. They created a vast empire across Asia, parts of Europe. And Genghis Khan, by the way, is reputed to be having been responsible for the deaths of as many as 40 million people. 40 million. Think of Hitler, apart or in addition to the people who died in the war, the Second World War, he was responsible for exterminating over 20,946,000 people. 20 million. Of course, among them were the 6 million Jews that he caused to perish in the Holocaust. Think of Stalin, responsible for 13,053,000 people. 13 million, yeah, apart from casualties of war. Think of Mao Zedong. In the Great Leap Forward, people have recorded that 45 million people perished in the Great Leap Forward. Now, this could have been due to famine or whatever, but people ascribe the cause to his policies. Okay, think of the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, and so on. So, in my books, and I believe what the Bible is trying to tell us is that when you got powerful kings, powerful presidents, and heads of nations, powerful dictators, these are gibbors. And many of them are famous in history. And even in the current day, you look around you, there are gibbors around. And I believe that these gibbors will be among the 10 kings that will destroy Mystery Babylon that we read of in Revelation chapter 17 and chapter 18 of the Bible. Gibbors. So keep a lookout for gibbors. And think of the tech giants, the people who created Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon.com, and so on. They created new industries, new companies that worth trillions and trillions of dollars, make themselves incredibly rich. Think of Elon Musk, his Tesla, and his SpaceX, and his ambition to send people to Mars, to colonize Mars. Yeah, there are people, these are mighty men that the Bible would call them gibbors. They are also famous men, they call them shem. So again, let me repeat. In the account of the fallen angels' cohabitation with human woman, there are three terms that are used: Nephilim, Gibbors, and Shem. People concentrate on the Nephilim, which I believe wrongly translated as giants. So everybody is looking out for giants, but people overlook Gibbors and Shem, and the two go hand in hand. Okay, so think of the examples that I just quoted to you. Next, we're going to talk about demons versus fallen angels. Are they the same or are they different? The Bible itself does not explain the origin of demons like those cast out by Yeshua. Elsewhere, you call them evil spirits. But the book of Enoch tells us that demons are actually the spirits of the Nephilim, the spirits of the offspring of fallen angels and women. And these demons are disembodied spirits which have been roaming the earth since the great flood. And they typically would live in desert places. And perhaps they are the ones that cause deserts to become deserts. And they, according to Enoch, they are destined to be judged in the end of days. And the demons themselves know this. And I can corroborate this from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 8, verses 28 and 29. And when Yeshua, he was come to the other side, into the country of the Gergesenes, there met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass that way. And behold, they cried out, saying, What have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? To torment us before the time. So that's a very powerful indicator that these demons that possess people, that Yeshua cast out of people, they know that their time on earth is short. And one day they'll be judged, as Enoch wrote about the judgment that is coming, that Peter wrote about in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4, and Jude chapter 1, verse 6, about all these angels who sin. Right now, they are incarcerated in the abyss, but these free spirits are demons. So that Peter and Jude refer to the fallen angels, the 200 of them, according to Enoch. But Enoch tells us that demons that are currently all over the world, afflicting people, trying to enter into people. And by the way, they need human bodies to express their sins. If they want to commit sexual sins, they need to enter into bodies of men and women in order to do or to indulge in their sins, because they themselves have no bodies. Okay? All right. How do demons differ from fallen angels? Okay. And when did the angels fall? You turn to book of Revelation, chapter 12, reading from verses 1 to 6 to 5, sorry, 1 to 5. There appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and under her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. There appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, to devour her child as soon as he was born. Verse 5. And she brought forth a man child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and the child was caught up unto God and to his throne. These verses are very important because they give us the information of when exactly Satan and the angels that sided with him got cast down from heaven, cast out of heaven and onto the earth. Okay, where they're now roaming all over the earth, in addition to the demons that we talked about earlier. Now, again, lots of Bible preachers think that Satan's fall preceded the creation of the world, creation of Adam and Eve. That's why he was in the Garden of Eden and so on. But here we are told that at the birth of Yeshua, there was a rebellion in heaven, and Satan and his fallen angels tried to devour the baby Jesus. Remember? Remember what happened? King Herod, when he was told by the Magi of the prophecy about Yeshua being born in Bethlehem, he determined to kill all the infants under the age of 2. So Satan, through King Herod, tried to exterminate the baby Yeshua. But Yeshua was delivered by Yahweh from the hands of Herod through a timely warning by the angel, grew up, had his ministry from age 30 to 33 and a half, died on the cross, got resurrected, and then got caught up to heaven. The term got caught up is he ascended to heaven, like the rapture. Rapture is being caught up to heaven. Okay. And please note something else, important information about Satan in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So you can see the different names of Satan in the Bible: serpent, devil, dragon, Satan, and I believe Lucifer as well, although this verse doesn't tell us. Okay. And the corroboration for what I say, coming from the book of Revelation that I just quoted, look at the book of Luke, Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 17 and 18. And the 70 returned again with joy, saying, Lord, even the devils are subject to us through your name. And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. So that gives us another corroboration about when Satan got cast out from heaven. Remember in the book of Job, chapter 1, that we quoted earlier, that Satan, called one of the sons of God, had access to heaven, okay, at that time. All right, so let's look a bit further at the Nephilim, Gibbors, and Shem in the end times that we are in, okay? Yeshua gives us two very important pieces of information. First, he said, our time, the end times, will be like the days of Noah. You turn to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 37. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Number two, he also warned us that our time will be as in the days of Lot. Luke chapter 17, verses 28 to 30. Likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot, they eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So, the Bible also talks in the book of Revelation about mystery Babylon. It talks in the book of Jeremiah about the daughter of Babylon. So what we put everything together, we have the return of the Nephilim, the offspring, the DNA manifestation of the fallen angels through cohabitation with human beings. We see increasingly extreme wickedness and depravity. Yes, recall very recent report from Canada. One of the tribes uncovered two mass graves, totaling over 1,000 children. These were forcibly taken from the tribal people, put into the religious schools, and obviously sexually abused, mutilated, and murdered, and buried in unmarked graves. Virtually every day you get news of pedophilia from different corners of the world. Trafficking in children for sex is very common. Think of Jeffrey Epstein, who supposed to have committed suicide in prison. He was going to be charged for pedophilia, having been charged once before. Okay, pedophilia. So extreme wickedness and depravity. Think of LGBT and think of gay marriages. They are proliferating throughout the world, in country after country. Barriers are breaking down, and people are proudly proclaiming themselves to be LGBT. Think of the Gibbors that I talked about earlier as rulers of governments, of states, nations, heads of major corporations, especially high-tech corporations that who try to reach out to the stars. Think of Babylon as a city of confusion, a system of confusion, a system of governance that is anti-Christ, anti-Yahweh, just as Nimrod was anti-Yahweh right from the beginning. Now, I'm going to quote you from a source about the display of a statue of an Indian god called Shiva in Switzerland at a place called CERN, CERN. Now, CERN is where the Large Hadron Collider is, and is one of the premier research institutes in the world. And it's a very scientific, physics-based kind of research, frontier research. But at the entrance is this statue, reputedly or reportedly a gift from the Indian government. So I found this interesting commentary that I quote. Unveiled on June the 18th, 2004, the 2-meter tall statue was a gift from the government of India. A plaque next to the statue with a quote by Fritjoy Capra explains its significance. Quote, hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes. In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. Unquote. So what you see as CERN is a confluence of ancient mythology, ancient gods and goddesses, and their worship, religious art, and the endeavors of modern physics. In us, there's a convergence. And some people have written about CERN is that they're pushing the technology boundary, the boundary of physics, to the boundaries, to the very boundaries that just thinly separating the physical world from the spiritual world. And some scientists there and elsewhere are reputedly trying to break through into the spirit world. So you can see the significance of the statue being displayed outside CERN, and that the scientists there find it very encouraging because the Shivas were created for the same purpose. So they see unity among mythology, ancient religions, and modern physics. So there you have what's happening to our world. And I believe we're living in tumultuous times. Now, we have no time to talk about UFOs, abduction by aliens of human beings, women, children, and so on, that are occurring throughout the world. These, I believe, are supernatural manifestations that are increasing more and more. And think of witchcraft, think of sorcery, think of spells people cast on others, think of seances, and so on. You see, mankind, human beings have always had a spiritual dimension. Those of us who believe in the Bible and Yeshua as our Messiah, we have a portal, a doorway into the spirit world. But it doesn't mean that other people and other religions don't have their own doorways. Okay? So that's what mythology, that's what human religions, that's what worship of other gods and other temples that are established throughout the world are for. They actually are portals to the spirit world, for better or for worse. As for me and my house, we serve Yahweh and His Son, Yeshua. For me and my house, we are looking for the portal into the kingdom of heaven. If we are right, we follow Yeshua as the way, the truth, and the life, we will get there. But people who follow other ways may end up in a different destination. But we have all free will, freedom of choice, and no one can take choices away from us. Our lifestyles reflect our own personal choices. We have a viewpoint from scripture. Other people have viewpoints from their holy books, from their religions. Who is right and who is wrong? The arbiter will be God Himself. And when Yeshua shall appear as we expect Him to appear in judgment over the entire world, then it will be too late if people have chosen the wrong way, the wrong portal. As for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh and His Son Yeshua. Shalom, till we meet again.